what are your values? What do you care about? What are some of the things that drive you? What motivates you? And start painting the picture of a future that gets you excited.
Welcome back to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore ways to achieve those two goals. And you are going to be so excited with today's guest because Brittany is a true entrepreneur by nature. She is not only the president and shareholder of a premium wealth planning firm, but she has also created multiple business ventures, such as serving a variety of industries. Her insights have been featured on national media outlets such as Forbes, Barrons, Wall Street Journal, the Huffington Post, Inc., Private Wealth Magazine, and AssetTV. Awesome. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here.
So in the intro, I was trying to explain to people how you both incorporate financial independence and long life. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting leading up to this point. A lot of what I've done in my experience has been in the wealth planning field. So I've led a team there. We've worked with wonderful clients over the years. We've had and developed a couple coaching businesses within our industry, and it's been really cool, really exciting. But in recent years, we've really pivoted heavily into how do you really create an even bigger future filled with even more possibility for people. So aside from wealth, which we found to be the foundation of what really supports kind of the next few things that I'll mention, we started realizing that once people kind of get that full wealth bucket, they start looking at a few different pillars. They're starting to really look carefully at their health and longevity. They're looking at their legacy. They're kind of redefining this sense of purpose, and they're really leaning into experiences and what they want for the future. So what I've been working on alongside my business partner is developing out kind of that 5-pillar approach for multiple different segments and multiple different kind of types of people, and dependent upon where they're at and what they're experiencing in their life at the time.
Perfect. Yeah. And it is so important, right? It's all fine and good because once the money is set, people get like they worry about, oh, I've got to have this, or this amount of money is going to make me happy. This amount of money is going to make me feel secure and confident, and that I know I'll be able to retire. But then what is retirement, right? I laugh when I talk to these young people like, oh, I retired at 28. And I thought to myself, what are you going to do for the next 70 years?
You're like, you're going to be bored in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it's so interesting that you say that because we've talked a ton internally amongst our wealth planning team. And, I've coached and supported advisors from all across the country. And it's interesting because when we all start talking about the number one thing that a lot of our clients are asking, and a lot of prospective clients that are just kind of testing the waters, they're saying, will I have enough? And as they approach those retirement years. But what's funny about that is it doesn't matter the amount of money they have. They're all asking that same question. And to your point, it's really about defining what you want for your future, because there's some people on one end of the spectrum that are going, I want to travel the world. I want to start a new business. I want a vacation home. I want to put my grandkids through college. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you've got people that are like, I have had this dream my whole life of kind of going off the grid. I want to sell our big house, and I want to downsize, and I want to go live by a lake, and I want to go fishing with my kids or my grandkids. And I want to just slow down and soak it all in and not have to worry about being anywhere at any specific time. So, it really depends on what you want for your future. And it's just interesting because it doesn't matter what the dollar amount is. People are often asking that same question.
Yeah. And so how do you help them answer that, Brittany?
Yeah, that's such a great question. A
That's a
big part.
seminar. That's not a podcast, right?
It is a seminar, let me tell you. And, it's so interesting, Christine, because what we've often done is taken people through kind of a journey of introspection, right? And a lot of times, my whole belief is that any decision, regardless of the stage of life that you're in, is you have to set this foundation of values. And, it sounds, people can get a little tuned out woo-woo here, but it's so darn true. You have to define what you truly believe to be important in your life, what you value most, who you value most. And that's really the stack or the first level of building blocks as you're building that ideal future. So I like to say that, start with your values, then we move into an exercise of visioning. It's really hard to create a vision if you don't know what you stand for, who you are, and who you want to be around or who you don't want to be around.
Right.
So then you
True.
start visioning for your future, and we'll have people look at a few different aspects or elements. We'll have people look at, what do you want for your body, for your physical self? Do you picture yourself being very active and, maybe you're still in sports, or you're a runner, or you're, taking daily walks, or, think about your mobility, your vibrancy. Then we have people really take a look at who they want to spend time with. I joke about that a little bit, but there's so much power and relevance to it. What's the whole adage? Was it a Jim Rohn thing that said, you're the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Yeah, that's
And
Jim
we
Rohn.
have seen that to be true regardless of the stage of life you're in. So we'll have people do that type of assessment of who are you around? What kind of people do you need to find to enhance your life, create more opportunity? And then you start backing into this renewed sense of purpose. And, Christine, I think you and I talked about this briefly when we first met, is that, everybody knows where they've come from. The job you've come off of, how you've been spending your time, who you've been spending it with, what you've been doing, all that good stuff. But what we don't always know is where the heck we're going. So getting that picture of that renewed sense of purpose, so that when you break away from your job, your career, your business that you've owned, whatever that looks like, you have somewhere to go towards, so that we can avoid that trap of feeling, feelings of hopelessness, of worthlessness, of depression. Those things do come about when people shift gears and kind of lose maybe a little bit of identity because of what they're coming off of. So those are a few things that we typically use as part of that building block of, let's define the future. Let's look at what enough means to you. And then the money kind of all gets backed into, and we have wonderful technical people on the team that help with that. But that part is really so, how do I say, maybe insignificant as compared to setting intention for your future.
It's so true, isn't it? I mean, it turns out that money's actually the easy part.
Yeah, it really is. It feels hard sometimes. But when you have the right who in your back pocket or in your corner, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, my mom is actually dealing with that. My dad passed away a few years ago after a 3-year illness. So he had a stroke, and she was doing a lot of care for him. And that became a lot of who she was, her purpose. And then when he passed away, now she's just like, she said to me the other day, I'm not in I guess in a little bit of a depressed way, to say, if this is all there is, right, going out and playing bingo and doing all this crap, I'm just really, I don't really want to, I'm bored already. I don't want to continue on with this type of a life. So she's looking for other things to do. But if she would have worked with you ahead of time, she would already have that laid out for her. She would already have thought those things through and be, I'm sure, in a much better place, a much happier, more, she would have been more resilient when that event occurred, when he did
Yeah.
pass. So
I think, Christine, you bring up such a great point here, and, thinking about women in general. So if you think about it, and this isn't everybody, by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of times women are in a form of a caregiver position. If you think about the statistics across the board, so be it, maybe they raised a family, and even women who worked, you still have a huge responsibility when you walk in the doors of your home. You get married, the statistics around, I'm sorry, fellas tuning in, but oftentimes men die sooner than women, and women would be the ones, like in your mom's case, where she becomes that caretaker, taking care of parents. So there's just this complete lineage that happens where the woman is often in the caretaker. And one of the things that it's a huge driving force for, what I do, but also what we've done within our wealth planning firm, is we want people to be able to say, I am so glad I had you, versus I wish I would have known. And what that means is that regardless of the planning, the money you tuck away, the vision you set for your future, all the hope of possibility that you can muster, really bad things happen. And it's not that you want to sit there and anticipate them, but you want to be prepared. Uh, there's so much that can be avoided and so much heartache that can be avoided in general if you're simply prepared for the tough stuff. I think back, I married and divorced at a very young age. And I wish that somebody was kind of taking me by the hand saying, girlfriend, if this doesn't pan out, here's what you're going to experience and here's what you can prepare for. So being able to show up for people like that, I mean, there's so much resources and value out there that people just don't know about. So I'm glad you brought up that example of your mom.
Yeah. So when you're first sitting down with someone, what's really the first step?
We have the way that we're structured is we have our team of advisors. This is within our wealth planning firm. But this also applies to a lot of the coaching that I do too. Is the first step is really just to get clear on who the person is that I'm sitting in front of, who the person is that's sitting in front of our advisor team, making sure that we understand what drives and motivates them and what's meaningful to them. So it's always helpful. And, throughout our process, we'll give prompts and different things for people to kind of get their wheels spinning. So you don't come in and you're like, well, let's talk about your renewed sense of purpose. What's that going to look like for you? Because people are going to be like deer in the headlights. I have no idea what you're talking about. I need to get out of here. So we'll give prompters ahead of the meeting, things for people to think about. We love using, this is a question or a saying from strategic coach, founder or creator, Dan Sullivan. It's his RDOS question. And it's really looking at, if we were sitting here 3 years from today, reflecting back on what happened over the last 3 years, what has to have happened for you to feel like you're making really good progress? And it's amazing that time frame for one, people tend to think in threes. So that's why like your 3-month, your 90-day increments, I live by that in my personal and my professional life. That's why that works. That's why the 3-year thing works. It feels like it's far enough out, but not so far away that you can't even envision it. So that's a lot of the starting point is let's just figure out who you are, what you want, and what does success look like to you? What does happiness look like to you? And then we can back into more technical stuff from there.
So can you tell me about a person or a situation where you've talked to somebody in the transformation or the surprise that you had in who they were when they walked in versus the tools that you gave them to walk out with?
Gosh, that is a great question. I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to give kind of a dual answer here.
Sure.
So within the coaching business, I was working with a woman who was a business owner. It was a multi-generational business. It was her husband's family, and she had really stepped in and decided, you know what, I am going to see what this coaching thing is all about. And she hired me to help her and help the team. I remember in the early stages, just watching her wheels, like her kind of sit back and her wheels were turning. She's thinking about her future. She starts thinking about, wow, life after this business. I knew that they had a sale kind of on the horizon, but they really didn't know what that looked like or what life looked like beyond the business. So we worked together for, gosh, I think it was about 3-4 years. And it was amazing to watch her blossom from a business owner to more of an entrepreneurial mindset to somebody who was like, you know what? I do have passions outside of this place, and I have things that I haven't thought about in a really long time. So she went through, they went through with the business sale, and she ended up kind of going in a similar yet different industry, and really redefined some of her own hobbies and her focus on health and what she got excited about. And it was in such a condensed period of time, but watching her light up and start seeing what was possible within her. I mean, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. That was so exciting and motivating. Like to this day, I think back about that journey and I'm like watching somebody lean into who they were meant to be and what they're most capable of. There is nothing that lights a person's soul up more than that. So, that's one example. And I have to give this other example too. So within our wealth planning firm, and I won't give away names or anything, but we had a couple who had sold a business recently. You notice a pattern. We work a lot with people who sell businesses. So we worked with people, a couple who had sold a business. Financially, they had done all the planning. They felt very comfortable with where they were. But we took them through what's called our Dream Architect workshop. And what that meant was really taking a head down focused time, helping them figure out where their values lied, what their vision was for their future, and what they wanted to do with the next several years of their lives. So we helped them create a vision board. They had things on it like specific trips. She wanted to do some writing. They wanted to spend certain time with grandkids. They had a foundation they wanted to create, all these really cool things. So that meeting and that process was so powerful for them. They ended up traveling with their dream board. They took it with them. They would send us pictures in different places that they would go. And so we felt like we were part of their journey. Like we were along for the ride. And after a while, the wife, the spouse, she ended up getting really, really sick and had an infection in her brain.
Oh my
Ended
God.
up kind of halting some of their plans, and she ended up in the hospital for a really long period of time. It was kind of touch and go for a while, and then she ended up pulling through. So it had like this halo on kind of a sad, dark time. But my point in sharing that is that um, if they wouldn't have gone through that whole process and created that intention and started checking things off the dream board, there's a good chance that that maybe would have never happened. Because what do we
Yeah.
always do? We always say, we're going to get to that someday. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah, I've got it on the horizon. Yeah, I'll book it when I get to it.
Yeah.
So they took the time to do that and create that intention, and it just opened up so much. And I actually just saw the gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he came up and he grabbed my hand and he just said, honey, I just am so happy to see you. And I'm just so excited for all that we've been able to do together on this journey with you and the sweet team. And I'm like, oh, my heart.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Again, it's those things, it's those moments in time that, man, your heart just sets on fire.
Absolutely. You made me think of something else too, is for younger couples, you for two people to have the same vision, or even to be able to align their visions and be both marching in the same direction, that's not always, you might take it for granted. Oh, we got married, so we have the same goals. Well, maybe you don't. And if you wait to talk about it until you're 55 years old, you realize you don't really have all too much in common. I mean, I feel like, and the reason I say that is because I feel like if you start out with goals and you make that negotiation when you're just starting out, then you're more likely you're going to grow together. Whereas if nobody talks about it for years and years and years, you're just going to get potentially could get farther and farther apart from each other. And I think that's when, oh, the kids are gone and now we find we have nothing in common.
Yeah, you bring up an absolutely fabulous point there. And here's the thing is, and we've seen this happen in multiple different scenarios. Even if you are intentional about those conversations of your future, your goals, your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions, people grow and change. And sometimes, even if up to a certain point, you feel like you're on the same page, it's amazing, excuse me, at what can happen when you kind of come back to the drawing board and you have maybe that renewed conversation. Like, where are things at for you now? This is what we've talked about, but do you still get excited about that? Is that still a vision for your future? An example of this, actually, we have what's called within our wealth planning firm, we have what's called an over dinner conversation tool. And literally it's charted of like, we have two different versions, like a his and hers, or yours and mine. Because, whatever if you're married, if you're not, if you're in a partnership, if you're not, whatever the case is, you want to go through this with somebody that you trust, that you value, and that you see yourself spending time with in the future. So what the whole premise is to create this, I use the word again, intentionality, where you sit down at a minimum of once a year to really go through and say, what do you see for your future? Where are you at? What do you want? Okay, now it's my turn to share, and I'm going to go through this exercise. And at the end of it, we're going to come together and see where there are commonalities and where maybe there's gaps. And those gaps are okay as long as you can figure out how to fulfill them and how to make sure that each person feels really confident and good about their future, and that it doesn't turn into a negative. Because you are so right, Christine. When people don't talk about it and you just kind of go through the motions of life and you get to where you get, that's where trouble can brew. So those intentional conversations just mean everything.
It's so true. It's absolutely true. And I feel, even like you say, even if you're not married, even if you're not in, even if you don't see yourself in a long-term relationship, I mean, you could literally just have the conversation with yourself.
A
Because
hundred
if you
percent.
know, right, if you know where you're going, you're going to take a specific path. You're going to make certain decisions, as opposed to if you just like, well, when I retire, I'm just going to, I'm going to pursue my passions. I'll play golf and do crochet. Like, yeah, okay, there's 2 hours a day. Or do you know what I mean? Like, you really, I feel like not knowing what retirement looks like is a recipe for real dissatisfaction. Like you say, depression. People, they retire, and then in a few years they're gone because they just felt useless, right? Their whole sense of purpose was tied up in their job, and they don't make that transition very well.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. When people are kind of putting things off until later, and this is such a funny example too, you know, we hear so often, not just from our own clients, but people in general that are like, "Oh, I'm going to, when I retire, I am going to move to Florida, and I just can't wait to be able to play golf all year round and spend all my time on the golf course." I'll be like, "That's awesome. Have you spent time in the area? Like, do you know what area of Florida you want to move to?" Well, no, I've been on vacation down there and I like it. We're like, oh, well, have you spent longer than like a week or two at a time?
You've been there
Well,
in August.
no. Right. And then we're like, oh, so how many times a day or how many times a week do you typically get on the golf course right now? Oh, I usually go a couple times a month with my friends, or we'll have a once a week thing. And we're going, here's what you got to do. You got to practice, just like anything. Think back to when you're a kid and if your parents put you in piano lessons. Were you good at piano when you first started? I can say I have 3 little kids. If they can get in front of a piano, they're all about it. They've never had lessons and they're terrible at it. It sounds horrible. It's no different when you think about, practicing for a period of your life. If you have a vision for your future of where you want to live, how you want to live, the activities, the crocheting, the knitting, the golf, the whatever, make sure that you actually like spending all your time doing that. Because what you don't want to have happen is you dive into that, you spend some time and you go, what in the world was I thinking? I have no idea what to do now. And I got to push on this too, because I think this is really important for people to embrace. So often we hear people talk about planning for retirement and the things that I'll do when I have time and the things that I'll do when I don't have the alarm clock. But here's the problem is I don't know about you, but I don't have an expiration date on the bottom of my behind, meaning I don't know when my expiration date is going to happen. So the one thing that I can stress is, really lean into the things that you enjoy now. You may not be able to spend as much time as you want, but you can absolutely take that trip. You can make plans to experience new things, to be around the people you want to be around, and to do some of the things that you enjoy. We can't keep putting it off. And I'll tell you, that's a huge drive called Trailblazers. And it's for women who are looking at creating that kind of future. And part of the reason that we even created it is we went, wait a second, why are we waiting? Like, what are we waiting for? Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Let's start experiencing and reaping the rewards of the life that we have put our whole hearts, minds, and souls into now. So I think that's another important thing too. Yes, plan for retirement, but live your life right now.
Yeah. Oh, Brittany, you brought up two fantastic points. First of all, I want to talk about that, what you were just saying, the idea that, oh, I have to wait until I retire to do XYZ. When I've had a lot of hats as well. So at one point I was working at a software company. And of course, it's always busy. There's always a cutover. There's always lots of things going on. And my boss was going on vacation. I said, how do you do it? How do you go on vacation? All these things. She said, put it in the calendar and do it. right? I mean, you could get hit by a bus. We will figure out how to get along without you for this period of time, but you have got to just put it in and it becomes a non-negotiable. This is my vacation. And that's really what you have to do with your own activities. Like, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock today because I'm taking a dance lesson, or I'm taking this, I'm taking 3 weeks off because I'm going on a cruise, or whatever the case may be. They'll find a way to get along without you. And even the money piece, right, will work itself out. You just need to be very intentional because, okay, whatever, right? Oh, my husband and I are going to do XYZ. And then one of you gets sick, or even, right? I mean, things just can happen, and there's no reason not to just have fun today. But the other thing that you said that I really want to bring up, and reiterate, is the idea of practicing for retirement, which they kind of go hand in hand, but that is such a fantastic idea, right? I mean, okay, that we're going to retire to Idaho, and we need to now go and spend several months in Idaho and make sure that we like it at all times of the year. Like, oh my God, look at this. There's, 14 feet of snow outside. Maybe this wasn't such a great idea, right? You don't know. I mean, and what I was saying about, Florida in August, like this sucks. This is horrible. I don't like being in 102 degrees with, 102% humidity. Like, wait a minute. And all
Yeah.
all that, and then you get deflated, right? You get just like, oh, well, now what am I going to do? Right.
Yes. And that deflated is such an important word because it is so true. It's like one of those things where you have this buildup. It's like a great movie. Let's just take this. You're watching this movie and you're like, oh my gosh, this ending is going to be killer. I just know it. Like, this whole thing up until this point has been great. And then you get to the end and you're like, what just happened? That was terrible. There was no like major, huge, awesome cliffhanger. There was no major, people fall in love at the end or whatever. And you're like, what just happened there? It's the same thing with life, is that you don't want to get to a certain point and feel like you look back and you're like, the best is behind me.
Yeah.
What you want is to be able to get to a point in your life and be like, I'm so stinking excited about what the future holds. I can't even stand it. So that's really what this is about, is helping people realize that, yes, there were beautiful points in life. And there's times where I can't imagine I'm spending time with my kids and my husband, and I'm looking around and I'm going, I don't know how it can get better than this. And then it does. And so I think those are just things to really be aware of, that let's find something that you can get excited about. Let's realize that this is a learning process, just like it was, as you were going through high school, and then you moved out and you got to college and you're navigating and you're making some mistakes and you're doing things that are fun, and then you're doing things that are not so fun. And then you're in your career and you have families and spouses and friends and all these dynamics and all this stuff. And it's like, you're going to have bumps in the road. It's the same thing in retirement. You just have to be able to redirect and have the right people around you to help you redirect.
Brittany, I really admire how your firm has taken the idea of wealth and recognized that there's just so much more to planning for your future than just worrying about whether you'll be able to eat, if you'll have to eat ramen noodles, right? I mean, there's just so much more to life. And I just stepping into that gap and filling it is just magnificent. I'm very, very impressed with your firm and with you.
Well, thank you. I sincerely appreciate that. And, I will comment one thing on there is, we've been talking a lot about health, and I know that's part of, the long life, the fulfilled life that you talk about here. Health without wealth and wealth without health, it's kind of a challenge, right? No matter which way you look at it. So if we get to a point in our lives where we've got maybe more money than we anticipated, or we're even at a point where we just feel really good, really comfortable financially, if you don't have your health and you don't have the ability to actually be agile and to live your life in the way that you want, it kind of makes all of that saving for nothing. And our whole stance on this is, we've talked about the purpose, we've talked about kind of the experiences and everything throughout this conversation. But I do want to make sure we highlight that your health is really important. And part of our goals is to put proactive resources in front of people to help them take better control of their health and what they want for their future. We're not health experts. We don't claim to be. We just know really cool people who are. And so that's part of this is that, yeah, we've got the core wealth planning firm, but the bigger vision in all of it is, how do we really create a way for people to just live amazing lives that are dream focused and lives that help them be prepared for the tough stuff and put them in front of people that truly care about them, who can help them in other aspects of their life to create this completely holistic approach, because we're in the business of relationships. We're not in the business of finances. We're not in the business of wealth. It's all about relationship. It's about the human, and it's about who we serve and how we serve them, how we show up for them. And they deserve it. They deserve those resources. So that's a lot of the inspiration behind what we do.
And health. And also I've noticed that lately you see a lot of, I mean, I'm an older person than you are, but a lot of the rock and roll stars, for example, who were popular when I was a kid, right? Some of these people are in their 80s and 90s and they're still out there, they're still performing, but because it's their passion. And I feel like that's what is allowing them to, I mean, if you ever see, like we saw, oh gosh, now what's his name? Peter Wolf. And I mean, I think he's in his 80s. He's on his knees, he's singing, and you just think, holy cow. But because his passion is fueling some of his health, right? That's what's keeping him going, what's keeping him so vibrant. And I've seen a lot of that lately. I feel like I'm being confronted with people. Like I saw Rita Moreno the other day, and I just think, man, she is aging in reverse. I saw her and she was in her 70s on Broadway in Kiss of the Spider Woman. And there she is climbing up this web on the stage. And I'm thinking 70. And now all of a sudden, now that I'm 60, I think, you know what? I could do that. Right. But it's part of being lit up and being excited about your life. I feel like that just creates good stuff in your body that keeps you more healthy, perhaps, than you might be if you were just sort of going through the motions.
Yeah, you just hit the nail on the head there, that purpose and that passion and that drive that gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning. That's what we want to help people find to keep alive. And it's so true. And I actually think about a dear friend and business partner, and actually we're a client of his too. His name's Reagan Archibald, and he has a clinic out of Salt Lake City. And he has this process. It's called, see if I can get this right, age 50 at age 100. And what that means is putting the right things in place so that when you're 100 years old, you're operating as if you were a 50-year-old. Your body's moving, you're still agile. I know he's working on age 25 at age 50 now. And it's just putting practices in place. Obviously, it's proactive healthcare too, but also a part of it is your purpose. And it is making sure that you have a clear definition of what you want your future to look like. Because when you stop getting excited about the future, that's when we start to see people kind of recess and fall back, and you lose that energy and you lose that excitement. I mean, heck, I'd love to be 80 years old. I mean, on a stage somewhere, living my best life, jumping up and down, whatever I got to do. I mean, that sounds incredible. Not everybody wants that vision, but I would bet you do want to be around people you love and doing things that you enjoy and all that cool stuff. So I think you bring up a really great point there.
Absolutely. But I mean, again, applause to you and your firm for recognizing that you need those components, right? The health and the wealth, and also the purpose, and how that keeps you young, keeps you living longer, keeps you more healthy. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much. I am humbled by that. And we love what we do. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning.
Fantastic. So Brittany, if people have been listening to this conversation, they're like, you know what? Holy cow, my financial planner doesn't talk to me like that. How can I get in touch with Brittany? What's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah. Easiest way is Brittany at sweetfinancial.com. I am incredibly accessible that way. We would put you in touch with one of our wonderful advisors to have a conversation. We do free or complimentary discovery calls. What that means is we are just as intentional as we want to make you for your future. We're just as intentional in our relationship. So it would be an initial conversation to just see where you're at, what your goals are, kind of what you see for your future. If we think we can help you, we'll tell you that. And if we think we can't, we'll tell you that too. So if nothing else, you'll make a new friend, and it'll be a great conversation that'll be helpful regardless of the direction you go.
Absolutely. And I can attest to the fact that having a conversation with Brittany is a pleasure. A
Oh,
pleasure.
thank you. I appreciate that.
So all of Brittany's contact information will be in the show notes. I know you know at least 5 people that you can share this episode with, because Brittany has just shared some beautiful visions and ideas and thoughts and works. But Brittany, is there some action that you feel that people could take today, aside, of course, from calling you, that would at least get them moving in the right direction?
Yeah, so I would say there's two things that you can do immediately. Number one, I would start your own kind of building block foundation of start writing down, grab a journal, grab a piece of paper, start writing it in your phone, whatever you've got accessible, but really start thinking about what are your values? What do you care about? What are some of the things that drive you? What motivates you? And start painting the picture of a future that gets you excited. So that would be, I think, step one. And step two is if you have somebody in your life that you trust, that you feel would be a supporter and not a hinderer, lean on them. If you don't have somebody, that's your homework. There is so much power in having connection and relationships, and take it from a fully independent, stubborn woman here. Uh, all progress is made when you're around great people. So if you don't have somebody, have that be something that you work on, because it will absolutely help you move mountains.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brittany, so much. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Likewise.
And thank you, listener, for listening. Make sure to be with us next week. I have no idea who we'll be talking to, and it might not even be as cool as talking with Brittany, but at least it hopefully be somebody fun. And again, make sure you share this episode with some friends. They will definitely thank you.